Hello, this is Screencast 10 of the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland Vectorworks screencast. In this screencast, I'm going to be talking about how to make complicated 2D objects by grouping together, adding, clipping, combining and intersecting two closed 2D objects. So what I will do is I will demo this by doing a rectangle and a circle and another circle. So those are three basic shapes you should be able to do no problem at all by now. If I select them all, so I use the selection tool and the rectangular marquee, and then if I go to modify, and these four commands are the ones that we're looking in this little group here. Add surface adds all the objects together to make a new object. So that object I could do with the polyline tool. Probably I could go draw that and then choose a point for the arc to pass through, and then smart points across there, and then back to the here. So you can kind of get the idea. I don't need to do it, but you can kind of get the idea that I could have gone and finished that off with the polyline tool, but it's far easier to glue together two-dimensional shapes. So that's add. Subtract would be if I have an object and then another object. So this time I'll draw a circle here. Now note there's a stacking order here, that I drew the rectangle first and then I drew the circle second, so the circle is on top of the rectangle. If I select both objects this time and go to the next thing in that menu, clip surface, it uses the top object to cut a chunk out of the bottom object. So it's very important. I'll go back there, that's back to two objects again to show you. It's very important to note the stacking order. If for some reason I wanted to cut the rectangle shape out of the circle, then I need to use one of these modify commands, send here. So send to front and send to back are absolutes, so that would send the selected object to the front or to the top of the stack. Send to back would send it right to the bottom of the stack or the back. And send forward and send backwards are used if there are multiple objects. If we had 4 or 5 objects and I wanted to change the position of 2 to 3 or 3 to 2 or something like that, I could send forward one step, like up one level in the drawing stack and down one level. But front and back are fine for the moment. So I want to send the circle to the back, then that now means when I select both objects and I do modify clip, the rectangle has taken a chunk out of the circle. So that's that. Intersect would be if I select both objects and I go to modify and intersect, it will create a new shape from the intersecting geometry of the objects which I've laid over the top of each other. So by some careful and clever manipulation and planning, you might be able to create some interesting shapes from layering objects on top of each other and looking at the intersect. The last of the commands are not used so much. Let's have a look, see if I can do that. So sometimes if there was a big complicated object there, the last command there, the combine into surface, allows me to choose which of those overlapping objects will be new shapes or multiple new shapes. So you can see my cursor's turned into a little paint bucket. So if I click on that area there, then that's created a new shape. And again, if I the same command again while it's still selected, he said selecting it, combine into surface, and then say that shape there might want. So what it did do was deselect them. I kind of caught me out there, but you can see how the combine into surface could create interesting shapes as well. If you wanted to cut holes in objects, which will become very useful and critical soon in task 1, I can put a circle, so you can put circles on top of the that, so I can select that, and then go modify clip. And remember, it doesn't look like anything's happened. Now that isn't actually a circle. I can make that a color just now to show how it doesn't look like anything's happened. It's not until you remove that it is actually a the hole. So sorry, I was babbling there. It's not until you remove the object. See, that's not a hole there, it just looks like it. So you need to be kind of careful in your planning to make sure that you modify clip. That's now cut a hole in it, and you can tell by the fact when I overlap it across something, we can see through the object. So just watch that the cookie cutter, the object that's on the top, remains. You can delete it. Just select, press delete, and it's done. So bear in mind, if you select one object and then try and go to the menu, it'll all be grayed out. So if you're trying to do something and these are grayed out, it just means you haven't selected both objects. It's impossible for it to add a surface to nothing. So you have to have both or multiple objects selected. One last thing to note, if you have objects which have color, so we'll do a couple of pastel-y colors here, and you join them together, the objects will take on the color of the lowermost or the bottom object. So the yellow square here and the green Pac-Man there, when I add them together, will all turn into the green Pac-Man color. So again, might not be critical at the moment, but just to be aware that that's the kind of rules that it does. This is super useful when you're drawing up a venue. So in the past, I've seen people using the polyline tool, and they've gone into a rehearsal room and they've taken measurements, and it's along the side wall, and the side wall, try that with this is super important when it comes to venues. I've seen people in the past when they've been surveying a venue, drawing the wall, and then the wall comes out, and then there's a little indent here, and that goes down by so many meters, and then it comes back in a little bit further, and then we've come along here, and then we've got a bit of a, that kind of, that's quite, I'm doing it roughly. If you were doing that with accurate measurements and you get one of them wrong, and then you have to back up, press the back space, and it kind of unstitches everything because this dimension here is wrong. A far easier way to do it would be to block out, there's the main floor space, there's the little alcove there, there's the bit that's the pillar in the corner, there's a little kind of bit out here as well, and then we can add all those, select all that, modify, add surface, and then we might note that there's a little pillar in the corner or something like that. Let's put that there, drag it over, and then we'll chop that out the corner instead of imagine trying to draw that and then draw a curve and then draw over. It would drive you mad. There we go, and there's the little corner missing. So that's a far easier way to make a stage area, a rehearsal room area, staging area, There's even one of the commands in here that turns, I think I alluded to it in a previous screencast, that would turn that, would bound that by walls, and then in which case you have a room done fairly easily without having to draw the polyline around the edge, the perimeter of the room. Anyway, what I want you to do is to go and you know how to do rectangles and rounded rectangles and ovals and circles and polylines and stuff. I want you to draw lots of things and practice with that menu, that add, clip, intersect and combine. Use all 4 of those and predict what's happening and create some complicated 2D shapes. Okay, and then we'll get on to your first task. So see you in a minute.